You're listening to the What's the Fuzz podcast, where we break you out of your vacuum seal and get down to what's real. Never miss another episode again. Subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows. And now, your host, Reiner.
Hey, what's up, Fuzzies? It is August 16th, 2020. Hope y'all had an amazing weekend. Thanks so much for tuning in, and double thank you to the loyal listeners out there that have been listening to every single new episode. As always, it's your favorite Blue Dragon, but I wanted to try something different today. We're trying out a new format for content creators that don't necessarily fit into the normal mold of the show. The first guest of the, let's say, content creator spotlight is Madison, the furry writer.
Heck yeah. How's it going?
Yo, what's up? Make sure to check out their new book, Ally, over on their website, writing.drab / what is it, Mako?
Makyo, M-A-K-Y-O.
Makyo. I'll put it in the show notes for you guys. Hey, how you doing today, Madison?
Doing pretty good. It's like a cajillion degrees out, so I'm staying cool as best as I can.
Totally valid. Thanks so much for coming on the show tonight. I'm happy to have you.
Happy to be here.
Feel free to tell the listeners a little bit about yourself.
Cool. Yeah, my name's Madison, writer and software developer living up in the Pacific Northwest, where just kind of chilling out, or trying to chill out if it's not so hot. My pronouns are she and her. As mentioned, I've got a new book out, Ally. You can see it at ally.id. And just rolling along. Got off the 6 months of unemployment because 2020 is the longest decade.
Damn, 6 months?
Yep. And since I was a contractor before, I wasn't eligible for unemployment, so that was exciting.
Oh, that sounds real exciting. Well, I'm glad that you're here today, at least. So, What is your main persona, and how do you feel it represents you?
My main persona is Maddie, because I paid good money for this name, and goddammit, I'm going to use it. And she's a snow leopard. I think that she's got sort of the best elements of sort of nerdiness that I like about myself. I often say that personas are kind of the more earnest versions of ourselves, not necessarily the better, but the ways in which we connect more smoothly with others. So she's a lot more confident than I am, and got a few things I wish I could change about myself. I'm a giant 6'2" person in real life. She gets to be a little bit smaller, but try to use her as a way to, be a better person.
Plus, they get a massive fluffy tail, right? That's always a bonus.
Yeah. Heck yeah, and you get to stick it in your mouth. I mean, that's just what snow leopards do.
Okay. I mean, I guess that's a bonus too. Sure,
yeah,
why not?
Shrug.
What got you interested in the furry fandom in the first place? And do you feel like it's a big part of who you are now?
Oh gosh. So I was last year in middle school, so it would have been 99. I was chilling on a forum called GovTeen and saw somebody had a fur code in their signature. So just like a random string of letters and numbers. I was like, what the fuck? So I poked at it, and it was I was like, oh, well, that's cool. People, pretending to be animals on the internet. So I figured I'd dive right in, and was not expecting to find so many just fantastic people here. And, it got to the point sort of around high school, early college, where I was, super, super into it, kind of drifted away for a couple years, and then came back with a roaring passion. I'd say there are probably like 2 or 3 hours of the day where I'm not, thinking about furry stuff. But, that's on bad days. Other than that, it's a huge part of my life.
Damn, you got a full-time job being a furry.
Hell yeah. It's important.
And you said middle school in 1999?
Yeah, I'm 34. I'm an oldster.
What?
Yep.
I legit thought you were like 22 or something. You look so young.
Yeah, I mean, estrogen does work some wonders on folks, and it hasn't gotten rid of the acne scars. I haven't grown any hair back, but it stopped the hair loss, so I'll take it.
Damn. Well, would you say that being a furry had any influence or made it easier for you to express your gender identity?
Oh yeah. I had a couple of sort of rough starts around exploring gender way back in growing up, and then just stayed away from it as best as I could. And then around 2006, I was just like, you know what if, and back then I was a fox rather than a snow leopard, and I was like, well, what if I was a vixen instead? And it was just like, oh, cool. Now I can find a way to feel like a ton better about my body, and a ton better about the way I present myself and how people interact with me. And having furry be such a great place to do all of that exploring led to me having a ton of friends who were going through a lot of the same stuff. So we'd lean on each other, we'd get more information from each other. Like people saying, "Oh yeah, it's seriously just as easy as going and making an appointment to get letters for hormones or surgery." There's a lot of support there.
That's kind of dope that you got so much support out of it.
Yeah. It's changed a lot over the years. Early on, it was a little more taboo, and then it got better. So bonus.
Do you feel like there's a more positive outlook for it now than there was then?
It's a little hard to disentangle like a general positive outlook versus like my own outlook changing. And but I would say so. I think the fact that one of the things that has really helped change that is both representation of trans personas in art, and also sort of a wider acknowledgement and acceptance that people do use furry as a way to better engage with their gender and their identity. We're all here to sort of engage with our identity anyway. So I think that people using furry as a way to engage with their identity is no longer quite so surprising as it might have been previously.
Yeah, that's true. And I think it could be like a double-edged sword kind of thing too. Earlier I saw an image. I think that the fursona was normally like presented as the, how do I say, as their preferred gender identity, I guess.
Sure.
So it would be titless ? So that person decided to draw them at tits one day, and they were like, fuck you if it makes you dysphoric, it makes me feel better. And I was like, really confused. I'm not sure what's going on with that.
That's a really interesting way to approach that. I wouldn't say that seeing other folks' characters working through gender stuff as making me dysphoric, but hey, everybody's sort of coming at this in a different facet. If it makes them feel better, I'm all the more power to them.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. Like, I don't know. You have to like account for everybody's different. It's just a little bit too much. You just got to worry about yourself sometimes.
Yeah, and when it comes to identity, my doctor way back used to say, identity is a pathology, in that you only really feel it. You only really feel your identity when something's going wrong. So hey, if it makes you feel better, if it makes you feel you're struggling with identity less, then hey, then I say you're doing better.
So I guess my version of a midlife crisis is going to be like top surgery or something, right?
I wouldn't be be able to speak to that. I know that when I went through surgery, it was probably the hardest thing I've ever done, but also the far and away best thing I've ever done in terms of quality of life. But it did really change. It did lead to, a couple of little crises of like, how does this affect my identity? How does this affect the way I'm perceived? I feel like a lot of trans women at least see surgery as sort of the last step of transition, and people would say stuff like, "Oh, I just see you as a woman. I don't see you as a trans woman." I'm like, well, I mean, I suppose thank you, but I still feel like a trans woman, and that's an identity I would really have a hard time letting go of. That's why I stopped working on my voice, because it's like I like being a trans woman. I've got enough privilege in my life that I'm able to work with that, for which I'm thankful and doing all I can to pass on. But it led to its own sort of crises along the way.
So the trans part is very important to you then?
Oh yeah, for sure. I would say that, it's the type of thing where, obviously folks aren't intending it to be an insult. And, I try to keep that in mind, but, erasing my identity as a trans person is not really a comfortable thing for me. So, I try to educate at least as best as I can and say, I don't see myself as a woman because it's really important to me that, I respect my identity, my own identity as a trans person.
That's a very interesting outlook on that. So, do you feel as though, as you were taking the estrogen and everything else, that had an effect on your sexuality as well?
Oh yeah, 100%. I was, more sexually active before starting on testosterone blockers and then estrogen. It always felt really uncomfortable to me that was a thing that I felt I needed to do, that I was sort of beholden to my biology to be sexually active. And, in a weird sort of way, it, led to me sort of accepting my identity as an ace person. And so, it's been interesting sort of going through both the change in sexuality from grudgingly sexually active and homosexual to being sort of asexual, but very sort of heteroromantic, in that I married a guy and I love him very much, and it's been a big change for him to now have a wife, but I think that it changed things a ton the more I started to the further along my transition that I got.
So you're more like a gray ace now?
Yeah, I would say gray ace, and it's being able to engage with sex on my own terms is cool, but the big thing is that it's like a lot of my identity, or a lot of my orientation, I guess, is sort of tied up in the fact that I just tend to fall for certain types of people, and when that works out, cool, and I'm happy with it, and it just kind of changed the way it didn't really change the way I feel attraction, but it certainly changed the way my attraction was perceived.
Yo, you are chill as hell. That is like really cool. You're just like, I'm here and people can accept me if they want to, I'm not bothered by it. That's nice. I like that.
Yeah. I mean, there's no small level of, I guess, privilege involved with that. For the past, I guess, 8 years, I've been working from home. So it's really easy for me to, be as relaxed as I am, because I'm not forced to engage with the world on those terms every day. I get to choose that. And, you know, I like to use that position of privilege as much as I can to offer help and support and an ear to others, and to do what activism I can around those topics. So, you know, I got lucky in those terms. You know, I had, you know, engineers for parents. They sent me to school, like a pretty good school. I got a pretty good job in tech.
Oh, wow.
And that gets me, you know, that gets me a lot. It's my responsibility to pass that on.
Yeah, no kidding. A good school if you got 2 engineers for
Oh my
parents.
gosh.
That's crazy. Damn.
Yeah. They were really disappointed. I started going into school for music, and they were just like, I can't believe you would do that. And it's like, well, I don't know. Don't know what to say to that one. So
Right. So it's not enough to just acknowledge that you have privilege. You have to, like, act upon it as well.
yeah, I think it's my responsibility, you know, like with a lot of the conversations and protests that are going on recently, you know, it's not enough for me to just acknowledge my privilege as, you know, a middle class white woman. I have the responsibility to educate myself and to then use that knowledge to, you know, try and better the world.
I really like your kind of outlook on things. I appreciate that.
I try to keep it positive. It's kind of hard when, you know, I get stuck in a cycle of doom scrolling on Twitter or whatever, but...
Oh, you're telling me. Let
Oh
me
my
tell
God.
you about my doom scrolls. I just, like... I can't sleep after a while of that. That's crazy.
Yeah,
But,
it's just like, well, okay, there's another reason that 2020 is awful. Oh,
yeah,
there's another reason
exactly.
the internet's awful.
Like, ever since I started following all these leftists on Twitter, it's just like
Oh,
every
yeah.
day, it just gets worse every day, and they're all just like, fuck the system, we're gonna storm the state capitals and all this shit, and it's just like, fuck, man. This...
Yeah, and you know, like I had to sort of take a step back at some point. You know, like I struggle a lot with my mental health, and I had to sort of make a decision. And you know, currently, the way I engage with Twitter is I can only see my tweets and responses to me. I can't actually see my timeline. So, like, I had to focus and take that step back and be more deliberate about how I engage with a lot of these topics. And it kind of slowed down how fast I was able to react to them, but it didn't leave me, you know, in the pits of despair quite as often. And that felt pretty important at the time. So, you know, working with that.
We got a little bit off topic, but since we ended up here, what would you like to say to the other white folk out there that struggle to acknowledge their privilege and also just kind of want to fucking, I don't know, throw their hands up and wail about how shitty they were for taking the Native Americans' land or something instead of doing something productive?
You know, there is a time when you have to come to terms with where you are, and that's a really tough time, right? And you'll want to throw up your hands and feel terrible about yourself. And you know, when you're feeling bad, one of the things you want to do is have others see you, right? You want to be seen when you're struggling, and that's okay. But there is a second part to that. There is you know, I keep saying it, but there is a legit responsibility for you to then use that energy that gives you to better things, and you know, rely on what information, you know, Indigenous and people of color and so on are willing to give you, but put forth your effort as well, and you can start finding all sorts of cool and interesting ways to give back, that meet the amount of energy you have to give. I struggle a lot around guns personally, so I haven't been able to make it to more than one or two of the protests. But what I can do is, now that I'm employed and I'm working in a tech job and so on, is like there's ways that I can give and ways that I can support. There's I live up in north of Seattle, and there's this organization called Real Rent Duwamish, where, since we live in unceded territory, the least we can do is offer what we can to help support the folks who, from whom we took the land, right? So you set up a small recurring donation to essentially, pay rent is kind of a strange way to put it, but it is what it is. You're living on land that is unceded by the Coast Salish people, and you have a responsibility to do right by them. So there are ways that you can engage with this topic, and don't feel bad about doing it incrementally. Don't feel bad about getting your thoughts out, but you have to move forward too.
All right, well said. Getting to the last section here, would you mind telling us a little bit about Ally and what it means to you?
Oh gosh.
I know it was like a big one for you.
It was real big. It was real big. So I went through, a big process of getting my previous book, Restless Town, out into the world. And when I was done with that, having put all this energy into writing about, furries and, their engagement with identity and in sort of a furry world, it's like, oh, cool. Well, now I'm thinking about this. And I got to thinking about my own. And then, someone reminded me that LiveJournal existed. And I was like, oh shit, I've got a LiveJournal. And I went back and dug through it, and I found a couple of posts where I was talking to myself. Where, I had this ally, which was a version of myself that knew as much as I knew, but also demanded that I do better. And I kind of took that idea and ran with it. So Ally sort of is something like a memoir. Some of it's real, some of it's not. It started out as the website ally.id, and it's this really non-linear thing. Like, I start talking about gender, and then that gets me to talking about my engagement with furry and gender, and then I go talk about furry for a while, and it's like, oh, this is really cool, really fun. And all of it takes the form of this conversation between me and my ally. And then I was like, well, it was way easier than I thought it would be to get a book out there with Restless Town. Why don't I try and pull this together into a book? And I was like, okay, cool. I can go ahead and get it typeset and everything. And then I got it all typeset. I got the cover done, and I got it uploaded and ready to print, got the ISBN, all that cool stuff. And then I was like, well, shit. It already feels incredibly selfish to ask someone to read something that I've written. And then it's doubly selfish for me to ask people to read something about myself. So it wound up being this big, super meaningful thing for me to say, there's validation I hope that I can offer to others as a trans person, as a writer, as someone who struggles with mental health. Like, hopefully somebody can come away from that book with something good. And, it wound up being this sort of all-encompassing project. And Restless Town was meaningful for me, but this one trumps that, or trounces that. Let's go with a better word there. Trounces that.
Yeah, good
in
save
terms
there.
of meaning. Yeah, right. In terms of meaningfulness. So, I'm really happy that it's out in the world, and I've gotten some really good feedback on it, and it's it's something that I'm really, really looking forward to, finding its way into people's hands, because it meant a lot for me, and all I can do is hope that it means a lot for them too.
Well, hey, it sounds like you put a lot of effort into this, so at the very least, people could see that. Now, Video on Twitter wants to know, what has been your proudest moment as a furry writer / editor?
Oh gosh. I think my proudest moment was my first project in sort of the furry writing community that was sort of a community effort, was Arcana, which is an anthology that I put together back in 2017. And, I put a lot of effort into that in terms of finding the best stories from the best authors that the fandom has to offer, and making it look really good. And we got art for each of the stories. We got a cool cover, and it really paid off. It wound up winning a Coyote for best anthology. And prior to that, I'd done a whole lot of stuff with Adjective Species, and I was like, oh yeah, that's pretty cool, but it pales in comparison to the sort of just really cool feeling of seeing Arcana come to fruition and take off.
Hey, congrats on the award. So my last question for you tonight would be, if you could meet yourself from 5 years ago, what would you tell them about the future of your writing career?
5 years ago, I was still pretty focused on Adjective Species, which was a really cool project when it first started, way back in 2011 or whatever. But I would have probably told myself, it's really cool, but don't write yourself into a corner. Because it took me a long time to get away from the sort of formulaic structure of writing blog post after blog post, and to sort of allow myself to write something that I engaged with, rather than something that was just informative. And I would have probably, told myself to just chill out. Writing is something that happens more smoothly when you are into it, and don't try and force yourself to do something that you're not into. So I think that's probably what I'd say.
All right. I think that's all I got for you. Thanks so much for sitting down with me tonight, Madison. Don't forget to subscribe to What's the Fuzz on Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Podcast Addict, Breaker, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows out there, guys. You can follow the show on Twitter at What's the Fuzz, and you can follow my editor at VioGoat on Twitter as well. If you like this episode and want to support the show, head over to Ko-fi/Reiner to donate, or share this episode around with your friends and your family. You've got 3 shoutouts to use. Tell our audience where to go.
Oh gosh, yeah. Like if you want to check out if you want to check out Ally, go ahead over to ally.id. That's ALLY. If you want to check out more of my writing, head over to makyo.ink, makyo.ink, and yeah, be good to other people.
All right. Catch you next time, guys. See ya.